When Prince Harry agreed to sit down with Piers Morgan, no one expected calm conversation, least of all Piers himself. The tension between the outspoken host and the defiant prince had been simmering for years. Now, face to face under the glare of studio lights, the air was thick with unspoken resentment. What was meant to be an interview quickly became a duel of words, one that would leave both reputations bruised and millions stunned by how it ended. The Piers Morgan uncensored studio was unusually quiet that night. No audience chatter, no laughter, just a charged stillness, as if the room itself was waiting for something to ignite. Piers sat forward in his chair, posture razor straight, expression calm but coiled. Across from him, Prince Harry, dark navy suit, no tie, collar open, eyes tired yet unyielding. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just watched. Piers began with that trademark tone, polite, edged with steel. "Your Royal Highness, thank you for joining us. It's been a while since you've done an interview that wasn't, shall we say, curated." Harry smirked. "Well, Piers, unlike you, I don't have to scream for relevance. I'm here because people want truth, not tabloid tantrums." A ripple passed through the crew. Piers didn't flinch. "I see we're starting early," he said lightly. "Let's talk about that truth. You've said the media destroyed your peace, but you've also built a career speaking to them. How do you reconcile that?" Harry shifted, voice low and deliberate. "Maybe I realize that if I don't tell my story, people like you will, and twist it." Piers tapped his pen. "Right, but isn't that convenient? You claim to hate attention, yet you've done more interviews in 3 years than your family in a decade." Harry gave a dry laugh. "I wouldn't expect you to understand balance, Piers. There's a difference between controlling your narrative and feeding the noise. You live off noise. I live off truth." The temperature seemed to rise. Piers leaned back, arms folded, eyes narrowing. "Truth," he repeated. "Interesting word, coming from someone accused of rewriting history, his own book included." Harry's lips tightened. "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm correcting what people like you distorted. You call it rewriting. I call it reclaiming." The rhythm sharpened, every exchange faster, sharper, louder beneath the calm. Piers's control was slipping into tension. Harry's smug pauses and faint smirks didn't help. Piers flipped a page. "Let's talk about family. You've said you want reconciliation. Yet your interviews, memoir, and Netflix deals seem to burn bridges faster than you can rebuild them. Have you done anything to repair the damage?" Harry raised an eyebrow. "Repair?" he echoed. "I'm not the one who broke it." "But sure, blame me. That's the story your viewers like, isn't it? The ungrateful prince who ran away." Piers's voice dropped an octave. "I think people just want honesty. You talk about healing, but your actions seem to cause more division. Even tonight, you've walked in with the same arrogance people accuse you of." Harry smirked, almost amused. "I don't need to be liked, Piers, and I don't owe explanations to people who've made a living off criticizing me." Silence stretched, thick, electric. The air between them was no longer professional. It was personal. Piers spoke quietly. "You do realize this? Your sarcasm, your deflection, is exactly what turns people against you?" Harry's eyes hardened. "I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to tell my truth. If people can't handle that, that's their problem." Piers exhaled, shaking his head. The civility was gone. The real conversation was only just beginning. He straightened his papers, then set them aside. "Let's get into your truth, shall we?" The studio clock blinked its indifferent digits as if counting down. Piers leaned in, voice measured. "You've said the press hunted you, that the institution failed you. Yet you signed multi-million-dollar media deals, a podcast, a documentary, a tell-all book. Help me understand the contradiction." Harry's mouth twitched, half a smile, half a warning. "It's only a contradiction if you don't grasp the difference between exploitation and authorship. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm correcting a record built on hostility." Piers's voice was calm, but his eyes burned. "Is that what happened in your book?" The pause that followed was longer than it should have been. And for the first time that night, Harry didn't answer right away. Correction or catharsis? To many readers, it felt less like setting the record straight and more like setting family members on fire. Harry leaned back, fingers laced loosely over his lap. "And there it is," he said. You want contrition for the crime of telling the truth. Sorry, not happening. Piers didn't blink. No one asked for contrition. I'm asking for clarity. You say you want reconciliation, but every public move seems to make it harder. Why another televised sit-down if peace is the goal? Because peace, Harry said crisply, doesn't come from pretending the bruises aren't there. And yet, Piers replied, most people don't heal a family fracture by performing it for cameras. The crew behind the lenses didn't move, afraid even a breath might crack the fragile silence. Harry tilted his head. You're not exactly a marriage counselor, are you, Piers? No, Piers said, mild as winter sunlight. Just a broadcaster asking the obvious questions you refuse to answer. Harry chuckled, low, humorless. Obvious to you isn't the same as intelligent. Then let's try intelligent, Piers countered, leaning in slightly. You've accused parts of the British press of racism and cruelty. Many would accept the cruelty, we've all seen it. But when you paint with a roller instead of a brush, you implicate millions who read or report responsibly. Is every critic a bigot? Or do you just dislike criticism? Harry's stare cooled. When you've lived what I've lived, you learn which patterns matter. I don't need to pass your exam. It's not an exam, Piers said softly. It's accountability. Silence pulsed. A light hissed faintly overhead. Harry leaned forward, elbows on knees. Accountability from you. The man who's made a career calling others hypocrites for ratings? That's rich. Piers let the insult slide. He folded his hands steady. You've spoken about safety, privacy, dignity, all valid concerns. But you've also launched a global campaign around your private grievances, then bristled when people responded. So which is it, privacy or prime time? I'm seeking fairness, Harry shot back. You act as if telling my story forfeits my humanity. It doesn't. I'm not a prop in your nostalgia for a family that eats its wounds with silver cutlery. Piers arched an eyebrow. And yet you sell chapters of those wounds by the page. Harry's smile hardened. Better I sell them than let you steal them. A beat of silence, sharp, suspended. Piers changed tack. Let's talk about service. You've said you still serve the public just differently. But you've also monetized nearly every inch of your narrative. Where does service end and brand begin? Service, Harry replied, isn't defined by a building in Westminster or a crest on stationery. It's defined by impact. Then show us, Piers said evenly. Not the sizzle reel, substance. What measurable outcomes are you proud of beyond awareness and applause? Harry blinked, irritation flickering. I don't need to present a spreadsheet for you. You're the one claiming to be mission-driven, Piers said. A mission is measurable. Otherwise, it's marketing. Harry stared, jaw set, as if weighing how far the cliff edge was. You want numbers? Fine. Programs funded, veterans treated, scholarships endowed, they exist, even if your show refuses to see them. My team requested documentation from your foundation this week, Piers said, tapping a folder he didn't open. We received a one-page summary of talking points. No audited figures. Harry's jaw flexed. So now you're an accountant? I'm a journalist asking for receipts, Piers said evenly. You invited scrutiny when you made impact your mantra. For the first time, Harry's voice thinned. You think you can bury me in paperwork to avoid the real conversation? I think paperwork is the real conversation, Piers replied. When money and moral authority intersect. Harry exhaled slowly, controlled, dangerous. He straightened, smoothing an invisible crease from his jacket. What's next, Piers? Drag my wife into it? You lot always do when you're losing the plot. Piers's gaze didn't flicker. I'm not dragging anyone. But you've made Meghan central to your public story. It's fair to ask how that partnership influences your decisions. Harry laughed, bright and cold. Ah, there she is. The specter you can't resist. Say her name, spike your ratings. You should be paying us royalties. I'm not invoking her to provoke, Piers said. I'm invoking her because you do, constantly. You frame shared choices as solo righteousness, then bristle when asked about the team behind them. Team, Harry repeated sharply. You mean marriage, partnership. Something you apparently can't comprehend unless it fits a production schedule. Marriage, Piers agreed, is exactly why the public judges both of you when you ask them to believe your story wholesale. Harry's eyes flashed. We didn't ask to be adopted by anyone. We asked to be left alone. Piers gave a small, incredulous smile. On a global broadcast watched by tens of millions, you keep saying, "Leave us alone," into the loudest microphone you can find. Something in Harry's patience snapped. What do you want, Piers? A confession? A capitulation? Should I kneel at the altar of your audience and beg forgiveness for not playing mascot anymore? I just want an honest answer, Piers said, his voice firming. Why should people believe you're fighting for principle when every move you make is packaged for profit? Harry sat back, silence stretching between them. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, measured, but edged. People should believe me because I've paid for the truth in blood, in sleep, in family. Because I walked away from an inheritance to become a person. You call that branding. I call it breathing. Piers let the words hang for a moment. And yet, he said gently, you didn't walk away from the spotlight that came with the inheritance. You carried it and tried to rent it out. Harry's lips parted, then pressed shut again. The cameras fed on the tension like sharks on scent. I think we're done with your circular sermons, Harry said finally. Ask a real question or admit you're just performing resentment for clicks. Piers's expression cooled. His voice dropped, precise and deliberate. Fine, a real question. Do you regret anything? Any choice, any word, any grievance aired? Anything you'd take back for the sake of those you still claim to love? Harry folded his arms, chin high, eyes bright with disdain. I regret underestimating how fragile the British media's ego is. Beyond that? No. Not one sentence? Piers pressed. Not one private detail that didn't need to be public? Not one that wasn't already being sold, Harry replied. I just stopped letting others invoice my life. Piers nodded once, almost to himself. That'll sound brave to some, and breathtakingly self-serving to others. Harry's mouth curved. Lucky for me, others don't get a vote. And yet, Piers countered, they're the public whose respect you say you want. I never said I wanted their respect, Harry said. I said I wanted fairness. Respect's optional. Fairness isn't. Piers leaned back. The chair gave the quietest sigh. You've asked for fairness tonight, he said evenly, while offering very little of it, to your family, to the audience, even to me. You came armed with contempt and called it candor. Harry's eyes cooled to flint. And you came armed with old grudges and called it journalism. A red tally light flickered as the camera refocused. Someone coughed. The air felt like a lit match hovering above dry leaves. Piers gathered his notes, aligning the pages he didn't need. All right, he said. Let's take a brief break, Harry snorted. Need a moment to regroup? No, Piers replied, calm as ever. I want the next segment to focus on veterans' issues, security, and the charities you've mentioned. You'll have every chance to be precise. Harry didn't soften. Precision's wasted on people who prefer outrage. Then surprise us, Piers said. Choose precision. The floor manager began the countdown with raised fingers. The lights cooled a degree. Music swelled, then faded as they drifted to commercial. Harry leaned forward just enough for Piers to hear. You think you can pin me to your storyboard? He murmured. Piers didn't look away. I don't need to pin you, he said quietly. You're already telling us who you are. The red light blinked back on. The interview resumed, and with it, questions sharp enough to slice paper. What they'd cut next wouldn't be paper. The third segment opened tight on Harry's face, the studio lights catching the faint sheen of irritation that had replaced his earlier confidence. Piers Morgan sat upright, calm, collected, eyes sharpened to a scalpel's edge. No longer an interviewer, a surgeon preparing for an incision. The air between them was static before the storm. Welcome back, Piers said smoothly, voice controlled, the consummate broadcaster once more. We've covered your experiences with the media, your views on privacy, and your ongoing public role. I'd like to turn now, he said, pausing just long enough for the tension to breathe, to accountability. Harry arched an eyebrow. Oh, here we go, he muttered, a thin, mocking smile tugging at his lips. Piers ignored the jab. You've said you want to inspire change, he continued evenly. But when critics point out contradictions, like demanding privacy while signing multi-million-dollar content deals, you call them hateful. Isn't it possible that some criticism is fair? Harry leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. Piers, you seem obsessed with this privacy argument. Maybe that's because your entire career depends on violating it. You've built an empire on gossip, not journalism. Piers's expression barely shifted, though a faint muscle ticked in his jaw. I ask questions for a living, Your Royal Highness. That's not gossip, it's accountability. And I think most viewers would agree that the man who published an autobiography detailing every family feud isn't exactly allergic to publicity. Harry let out a short, humorless laugh. Autobiography, yes. Not propaganda. I told the truth. Something you might want to try sometime. For a moment, Piers just studied him. Not angry, calculating. Then let's talk about responsibility, he said finally. You've criticized your father, your brother, the institution itself. But not once have you said you regret anything. Do you ever think about the human cost of what you've said? Harry's smirk deepened. Human cost? Piers, please. You talk as if honesty is an act of violence. I didn't create the damage. I exposed it. And yet, Piers said quietly, you've hurt people you claim to love. That's not revelation. That's collateral. Harry laughed again, sharper this time. You're very dramatic, aren't you? That's why your show exists. You need conflict to feel relevant. Conflict? Piers asked, still calm. You've brought plenty of that yourself tonight. All I've done is ask you to explain your own words. I don't owe you an explanation, Harry snapped. You wouldn't understand the kind of pressure that comes with being me? Pressure? Piers leaned forward slightly. You mean the kind that comes with privilege, security, and a global platform? Forgive me, but I think millions handle far worse without half as much complaint. Harry's eyes flashed. Oh, so now it's a competition of suffering? You're really showing your colors, Piers. This is what happens when people can't stand to see someone step out of their gilded cage. Piers's tone sharpened by a fraction. Stepping out is one thing. Setting the cage on fire and blaming the people who built it, that's another. Harry's smirk faltered. The air between them grew taut. Tell me something, Piers continued. Do you ever wonder if you've become the very thing you claim to despise? You say you hate the media circus, but you feed it every time you sit down for another interview, every time you sell another version of the same story. Harry leaned forward, eyes narrowed. You think you're clever, don't you? You keep trying to trap me, but it won't work. I'm not the villain here. I'm the one who stopped pretending everything was fine. Piers's voice was calm but firm now. And yet everything about your tone tonight suggests you think you're above everyone else. Every question I've asked, you've met with sarcasm or contempt. You call yourself a truth teller, but you can't handle scrutiny without turning defensive. I can handle questions just fine. Harry shot back. I just don't respect yours. The words landed like a slap. Piers blinked once, a slight crack in his composure before recovering with a small smile. All right, he said quietly. Let's make it simple. You call the monarchy outdated and oppressive, yet you still use your royal title. You still profit from it. You still accept the privileges it gives you. Isn't that hypocrisy? Harry's smile vanished. His tone dropped to a low, simmering growl. I'm not responsible for what the media or the monarchy label me as. If others use my title, that's their choice. I've moved on. Moved on? Piers raised an eyebrow. You're here talking about it, aren't you? Harry's expression hardened. You just don't get it, do you? I'm not here because of my title. I'm here despite it. You think it defines me. It doesn't. That's your obsession, not mine. And yet, Piers said, leaning in slightly, you've built an entire brand around escaping it. You've monetized your rebellion. That's not liberation, Harry, that's marketing. Harry's hand came down hard on the armrest. Not quite a slam, but close. You don't know what you're talking about, he hissed. You've never lived under that kind of scrutiny. Every breath dissected, every headline twisted into a weapon. You sit there pretending to understand, but you don't. You never could. Piers didn't flinch. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel. You're right, Piers said evenly. I can't understand that kind of privilege. But I do understand responsibility. And for the last 3 years, you've blamed everyone. Your family, the press, the institution, everyone except yourself. That's not courage, Harry. That's cowardice dressed up as victimhood. Harry straightened in his chair, voice cold and sharp. You think you can talk to me like that because I'm sitting in your studio? You think you have the right to lecture me about courage? Piers didn't blink. No. I think I have the right to hold you to the same standard as anyone else who lives in the spotlight. The silence that followed was suffocating. The red recording light blinked in the corner like a pulse. Harry leaned forward, venom curling in his tone. You know what, Piers? You're just another man hiding behind a desk, too afraid to live a real life. You talk about accountability, but your whole career depends on mocking people braver than you'll ever be. Piers didn't move. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, but icy. And your career, Harry, seems built on burning bridges and calling it honesty. Harry's mouth opened, but no sound came. For the first time, hesitation flickered across his face. He knew he'd gone too far. Piers glanced briefly toward the producer behind the glass, then back to Harry. We'll take another short break, he said coolly. When we return, we'll talk about integrity, assuming there's any left in the room. Harry's jaw tightened, his face flushed. You really think you can intimidate me? Piers gave a thin smile. No, Your Highness. I think you're doing that all on your own. The lights dimmed for the commercial, but the tension stayed exactly where it was, heavy and unbroken. The next segment would decide everything, and by the end, one of them wouldn't still be in that chair. When the red light blinked back to life, the air was no longer civil. It was charged, electric. Piers adjusted his cuff, eyes steady on Harry. His voice carried that refined kind of politeness that cuts sharper than anger. Welcome back, he said. We're continuing our conversation with Prince Harry, a man who's redefined what it means to live publicly while demanding privacy. Let's see if we can find some common ground before the evening's over. Harry didn't smile. His jaw was set, his expression an elegant mask of irritation and defiance. I'm not sure we're capable of finding common ground, Piers, he said flatly. You live in a world that feeds on controversy. I live in one that survives it. Piers gave a faint, humorless laugh. Well, you certainly know how to create it. Harry leaned forward, voice edged. You invited me here to talk, not to be insulted. I've insulted no one, Piers replied smoothly. I've only asked questions you refuse to answer. Questions built on bias, Harry shot back. You came into this wanting a fight. I just didn't realize how desperate you were to get one. Desperate? Piers repeated softly. No, just tired. Tired of watching a man who's been given every privilege in the world pretend to be its victim. The words landed like a hammer. Harry froze. His nostrils flared, but this time he didn't laugh. You know nothing about my life, he said tightly. You sit behind that desk spewing judgment about people you'll never understand. I had to rebuild everything from nothing. You wouldn't last a week in my shoes. Piers's tone didn't rise. And yet you spend every day talking about them. Maybe stop polishing the shoes and start walking forward. Harry's patience broke. His palm slammed against the arm of his chair. You think you can talk to me like that because you're hiding behind a camera? You're a coward, Piers. You've made a living tearing people down, and you can't stand it when someone stands up to you. The studio went still. Behind the glass, a producer mouthed, "Cut it." Piers lifted a single finger. No, let it play out. His voice, when it came, was quiet but cutting. I don't tear people down, Harry. I hold them accountable. There's a difference. The only reason you think you're being attacked is because you've spent years surrounded by yes-men. Harry's mouth twisted. Accountable to whom, you? The same man who mocked my wife, my family, my choices on national television? Please. You wouldn't recognize accountability if it stared back at you from the mirror. Careful, Piers said softly. Or what? Harry shot back. You'll lecture me about respect? Spare me. I'm not one of your tabloid puppets. I don't need your approval. No, Piers said evenly, but you clearly need an audience. That did it. Harry's chair scraped across the floor as he lurched forward, voice rising. You invited me here to humiliate me. That's all this was, a cheap stunt for views. Piers leaned back, unshaken, eyes steady as ever. You came here to play the victim, Piers said coolly. I just gave you a stage big enough to prove it. Harry blinked, his face hardening into something between anger and disbelief. "You're unbelievable," he hissed. "You twist everything. Every time someone tries to tell the truth, people like you, people like me," Piers cut in, voice sharper now. "You mean journalists who don't let you script the story? People who refuse to let you weaponize pain for profit?" "You're disgusting," Harry snapped. "You think empathy is weakness because you've never had any, and you mistake cruelty for honesty because it hides how lost you really are." Piers didn't flinch. "And you think arrogance is strength because it keeps you from facing how small you've become." For the first time that night, Harry fell silent. His lips parted, but no words followed. The fury in his eyes had shifted. Less rage now, more wounded pride. Piers exhaled slowly, straightening the stack of papers in front of him. The gesture was meaningless. The interview had long since left the script behind. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought there might still be something here. A glimpse of humility, maybe. A trace of accountability. Something that could remind people why they ever respected you. But all you've shown tonight is contempt. For your family, for the public, for anyone who dares question you." Harry stood abruptly, tugging at his microphone wire. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this nonsense." "You're right," Piers said evenly. "You don't." Harry froze mid-motion, narrowing his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Piers said, turning slightly toward the cameras, "that this interview is over. I don't reward arrogance with airtime. If you can't handle a civil conversation without turning it into a tantrum, then you don't belong on this show." A collective gasp rippled through the crew. Even the camera operator hesitated. Harry's mouth fell open. "Are you kicking me off your show?" "Yes," Piers said simply. "Respect is a two-way street, and you've blocked every lane." Harry's face flushed deep red, his fists clenching. "You'll regret this, Piers. You always regret going against me." Piers gave a faint, almost pitying smile. "I doubt it. But I think the world's seen enough for one evening, don't you?" Harry stared at him, trembling with fury before ripping off his microphone. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "You invite me here just to insult me, and then you act like you're the victim." "I'm not acting," Piers said calmly, standing now as well. "I'm doing my job. You just don't like that someone wasn't afraid of you." Harry glared, breathing hard. "You're just another bitter man clinging to relevance by tearing down people more important than you." "And you," Piers replied, voice low and cold, "are just another man mistaking fame for virtue." That was the final blow. Harry turned sharply, muttered something under his breath, thankfully inaudible, and stormed off camera. The studio door slammed, the sound cracking through the heavy silence. Piers remained where he was, perfectly composed, his breathing steady. After a moment, he turned back toward the lens, the consummate broadcaster reclaiming the room. "Well," he said softly, a wry smile ghosting across his face, "I think that's a good place to stop. I'd like to thank Prince Harry for his time, what little of it we had. And I'd like to thank our viewers for joining us tonight. We'll be right back after the break." The red light on the camera faded out. The tension didn't. The crew sat frozen, unsure whether to speak. Piers finally let out a breath, muttering under it, "Well, that was bound to happen." Then, with a faint, knowing smirk, he turned back toward the off-air camera and said, "What do you think? Was I too harsh, or did he just go too far? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because next week we'll be breaking down another interview that left the world speechless.